The UK royal, former UK royal, has been now arrested.
The brother of the king, King Charles, has been arrested.
L'ex principe Andrea per il suo...
The royal family today projecting Britain across the world.
Outside Nigeria, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor has been arrested.
Around 8 o'clock this morning, 6 unmarked police cars brought non-uniformed officers to the house on the Sandringham estate, where Andrew has been living since the King evicted him from his vast home at Windsor. At the same time, police arrived at the Royal Lodge, Windsor, to search that mansion for any evidence as well. The police didn't release the name of the man in his 60s arrested and taken away for questioning. The King, in a statement, did. The King said, "I have learned with the deepest concern the news about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and suspicion of misconduct in public office. What now follows is the full, fair and proper process by which this issue is investigated in the appropriate manner and by the appropriate authorities. In this, as I have said before, they have our full and wholehearted support and cooperation."
Don't forget, palaces are meant to be intimidating.
Andrew has spent hours under arrest and being questioned by the police. Eyewitnesses said the police vehicle he was taken away in was followed by Andrew's own police protection officers in a separate car. The King was said to have had no advance warning that his brother was about to be arrested.
Do you have any reaction to the arrest of your brother, sir?
Your Majesty, how are you feeling after your brother's arrest?
The police will have weighed up with very special care what historians believe is the first arrest of a senior member of the royal family since the 17th century. The deluge of evidence from the Epstein files suggesting that Andrew, as Prince Andrew, as trade envoy, may have knowingly abused that office. On Christmas Eve in 2010, Andrew pinged across to Jeffrey Epstein what he acknowledged was a confidential brief from inside government on gold and uranium deposits in Helmand province in Afghanistan. That was just over a fortnight after Andrew returned from visiting Epstein in New York, a trip he later claimed had been a visit to end the friendship honourably. In July 2010, 2 years after Epstein's paedophilia conviction, Andrew's top aide emails about setting up a small investment, highly private office for high net worth individuals targeting Chinese. It has the appearance of a joint Epstein-Andrew profit-making enterprise. The email suggests we very discreetly make PA Prince Andrew part of it and use his aura and access. With the same haste seen in some of Lord Mandelson's contacts with Jeffrey Epstein, no sooner have government visit reports for Vietnam, Hong Kong and Shenzhen in China arrived in his inbox, and they are pinged across to Jeffrey Epstein within 5 minutes. Some say the police should have moved much faster to take statements or consider investigations into sexual assault and trafficking allegations, which surfaced years before the latest Epstein images and emails.
When the state is the alleged victim, you get this movement of power towards somebody in power. But when a woman is a victim or alleged victim, it moves at a ridiculously slow pace.
The police, who swear an oath to the Crown, may in the coming weeks pass a file to the Crown Prosecution Service. Any case would come to the Crown Court, a story that could end in one of His Majesty's prisons.
What's your reaction to your brother's arrest, Your Royal Highness?
The Princess Royal was visiting Leeds prison just after news of her younger brother's arrest, the tradition of service that the King and his mother long espoused, and which Andrew always claimed he did too.
Certainly in my case, I am not doing this, as it were, for my own good. I am not getting any return for this. This is all done on behalf of the UK. It's not done on my behalf. If I was doing it, I wouldn't, as it were, allocate my time in this way.
The former Prince Andrew has been arrested.
The ex-prince, as the world's bulletins dubbed him, may, like many before him charged with an offence, have said little or nothing to the police under questioning.
Your experience looking back, on the whole at this stage, do people tend to, on legal advice, say virtually nothing?
Yes, they don't know what the police know, and it's ordinarily appropriate. If I was advising him as a defence lawyer, I'd say nothing at this stage. because don't give them any more than they already have. And you'll get another opportunity. You'll be interviewed at some later stage where you can give a fuller account. That's, I think, what will happen in this case.
Recent scandals for the royal family have often revolved around personal relations. He will be painfully aware that this moment strikes at the whole purpose of the institution of the monarchy.
And Gary's with me now. So if he's still in custody, in a custody suite, has he seen the inside of a cell?
He may well have done. It looks as though the police are very keen to play this by the book. And in those circumstances, yes, he would have gone into a custody suite. He would have been searched. He might have had a DNA swab, fingerprinted. And yeah, while he was waiting for his lawyer to turn up, because he was ambushed by all of this, wasn't expecting it at 8 o'clock this morning, he might well have been sitting in a police cell with a loo and a bed and not much else. So if the police are playing it by the book, you wonder also about this whole business of him being arrested. Lord Mandelson wasn't arrested, but his properties were searched. But he was. Is that because they actually want to go even further, playing it further by the book, throwing the book at him in a sense, and showing that they're not treating him in any special way? Or did they actually arrest him to search his property, maybe because these investigations are even more advanced than the ones with Lord Mandelson? We don't know. What we probably do know is the answer to that question that was shouted out at the King. How do you feel? I think we can be fairly confident how he feels. I mean, utterly horrified by this, because at the heart of the monarchy for him is duty, service, rectitude. I think the royal family had some pretty public sort of run-ins with sort of moral rectitude in recent times, but he thought duty and service were the pillars that were still there, and they are wobbling tonight.
Gary Gibbon. Well, our chief correspondent Alex Thompson is outside Wood Farm in Sandringham, Andrew's home, where officers have been conducting a search of the property. And Aisha Tull is outside his former residence, the Royal Lodge in Windsor, where there's also been some police activity today. First, Alex.
Yes, let's remind ourselves first off, this arrested man is, of course, entirely innocent in law as things stand. This is a complex operation apparently spearheaded by Thames Valley Police. Now, they're headquartered about 7 or 8 miles north of Oxford, so a 3-hour journey over to here in North Norfolk. A considerable number of officers involved, 6 unmarked police cars in here at 8 in the morning to search the premises, but also get into the personal effects of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, not least his mobile phone and his computers. At least one newspaper reporting tonight that the government was given a tip-off, the Home Office, in advance, and thereby the Prime Minister. The police decided that was best practice in, shall we say, an unusual case like this. But also consider the police didn't do what they had powers and would quite often do in a case like this, which is simply invite their suspect to come in and discuss it at a mutual time. They didn't do that. They just wanted to get in there, make an arrest, an ambush, preserve the element of surprise at what was not a dawn raid, but 8 o'clock, something close to it. In short, they wanted to get up a posse, and they did.
Alex Thompson. Now let's go to Aisha Tull.
Well, this is the Berkshire address that police mentioned in that statement, of course. And as Alex said, we're about 3 hours away from where he is in the Sandringham estate. But let me just recap you on what was going on here earlier today. This is Royal Lodge. We're just outside the gates. The private residence is secluded away back there. But we know that searches have been going on, and we know that police have been in and out of here. We've seen the vehicles going in. Royal Lodge, of course, is a really significant address for Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. That 30-room manor is where he called his home for 2 decades with his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson. This, in Windsor, is also where he was last photographed, riding a horse, driving a car, going about his business. That was until a couple of weeks ago in February when he was moved to Norfolk. But now, Royal Lodge will be known as the royal address that was searched by police. And I asked Thames Valley Police whether they finished their searches, conducted them, at what stage are they at, but they have not responded.
Aisha Tull. Well, joining me now from central London is the former advisor to Yvette Cooper, and Home Affairs specialist Danny Shaw. And here with me outside Buckingham Palace, the royal commentator Sarah Hewson. Sarah, first of all, I mean, unprecedented is an overused word in the media. This is unprecedented and monumental.
Absolutely seismic, Christian, and we are in uncharted territory here. We have the King's brother, 8th in line to the throne, a man born inside those walls of Buckingham Palace, who is today spending his 66th birthday in police custody. This is a huge crisis for the royal family, a family crisis, but also for the monarchy. And what we saw in that statement released by the King earlier today, a very cold statement, a very serious statement, was an attempt again to distance them from Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor.
Are they throwing him to the wolves? He's the sacrificial lamb to save the monarchy.
Well, I mean, they did that in October, didn't they, when they stripped him of his titles and no longer a prince, no longer a duke, plain old Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. They did it again in the past couple of weeks when they kicked him out of Royal Lodge to more humble surroundings on Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate. Well, far more humble surroundings for him today.
Danny Shaw, let me bring you in. I mean, tell us about this charge. It's not a charge yet, but the crime that they are investigating, misconduct in public office. How easy is that to define?
Misconduct in public office is a tricky offence to prosecute and to secure a conviction on. It's an ancient offence, goes back several hundred years. And what it essentially amounts to is saying, well, you are a public office holder, you have a position in government or representing the government, and you have done something which has, is so bad that it's sort of brought that office into disrepute. You've either done something deliberately or through neglect. There have been successful prosecutions. One thinks of prison officers and police officers who were passing information for money to journalists, some 10, 12 years ago. Offences like that, and there have been other such cases like that as well. But it is difficult to prove, and it's such a tricky offence that it's actually going to be scrapped. There are 2 new offences that are going to become law when a bill that's currently passing through Parliament gains royal assent.
Is it clear that he is a public official?
Well, that's something that I would have thought the police would have taken legal advice on and would have to be pretty certain about that to bring him in for questioning as part of this. We understand that this relates to his time as a trade envoy representing the UK, travelling overseas for over a decade. And they would have been pretty certain about that, I think, before launching this investigation, bringing him in for questioning.
Sarah, I mean, obviously this is about the emails, as far as we know, the misconduct in public office. It doesn't go to the other allegations that Thames Valley are also investigating, which are about trafficking.
No, and what's remarkable about this has only emerged since January in the Epstein files. We have had years and years of allegations around sexual misconduct, around trafficking by Jeffrey Epstein. Allegations Andrew has denied any doing any wrongdoing.
And which the police didn't investigate.
Which the police didn't investigate. And actually what is saddening today is that it has been very quick to arrest Andrew on allegations of misconduct in public office. But all of those years where Virginia Giuffre has been making her allegations and pushing, and the victims and survivors of Jeffrey Epstein have been desperate to see justice, they haven't seen that. And they still haven't seen that today. Yes, we've had the statement from Virginia Giuffre's family to say that this is the moment they've been waiting for, but actually this doesn't yet acknowledge any of the suffering of Jeffrey Epstein's victims.
When you think about who else is going to have to be questioned as part of this investigation, palace staff, potentially politicians, other members of the royal family, I mean, I bet they'd like to question the king, but any prosecution gets brought in the king's name, so I guess they can't. I mean, this is just the beginning of, an enormous scandal.
It is the very beginning of a very long and grim and difficult story. And you're right, because Andrew, as a member of the royal family, a former prince, a former trade envoy, does not operate in isolation or as an island. Everywhere that he went, he was surrounded by aides or security. What did they know? Who did they tell? What did they see? What was known inside palace walls? There are some very, very serious questions still to be answered.
Danny, I mean, the people who will know a lot of the secrets are, of course, the police protection officers. How will Thames Valley Police approach trying to get the truth out of them?
Well, some of them may already have contacted police. We won't necessarily know about that or have been told about that. And if they believe that the protection officers can provide further information, they'll contact them and ask them if they've got information that's useful for the investigation. But, you know, they will keep this very much under wraps. There's probably a lot of work going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of. My experience of these matters is that police are quite often one step ahead of us. And, you know, that I think was proved today when they launched this arrest. Everyone was expecting him perhaps to be interviewed under caution voluntarily, but the arrest gives them that element of surprise. It enables them to conduct immediate searches of his property, and it also it sends a very powerful message, doesn't it? It's symbolic. It says, we are taking this really seriously. No one is above the law. If we can arrest a member of the royal family, we can arrest anyone.
But earlier today, the Democrat Congressman Suhas Subramanian, who sits on the House Oversight Committee, which has been investigating Jeffrey Epstein, spoke to us. And last year he spoke to, and he wrote to Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor to request that he answer questions from the committee. When I spoke to him earlier, I asked him what he made of this arrest.
It appears the law enforcement in the UK believes he committed a crime. We felt like we've had evidence all along that he was involved in criminal conduct, but we don't have subpoena power over Andrew. But we've been wanting him to come to us and tell us what he knows.
I mean, if this is the beginning of an accountability process, what does that mean to the survivors of this, scandal, this horrific scandal?
I spoke to the family member of one survivor who said in plain terms that Andrew losing his title was justice in and of itself. They did not want to see a lack of accountability anymore. They've been through this for decades now, in some cases, where they saw over and over again law enforcement, government officials not only not help them and not help the victims, but cover up the crimes of the perpetrators and the people involved. And so to even get this far, to actually see the Department of Justice release any files at all, much less 3.5 million, which still isn't enough in my mind, but to get this far was enough to make them feel like they're onto something and that they should continue this charge.
I mean, thus far, this is about misconduct in public office, which we assume has to do with emails that were sent between Andrew and Epstein. It is not about the wider scandal. How big a failure do you think it is of the Department of Justice in the United States that not just Andrew, but all of the other people involved in this scandal seem to be facing no accountability in America?
It's been a massive failure by our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and this Department of Justice and this president, that there isn't more accountability and transparency when it comes to this Epstein saga. And we're going to continue to demand that because this president is suffering quite a bit over this issue. People in his own party don't trust him anymore on this and feel like he's hiding something. But we're going to continue in Congress to push for answers. And certainly the more we push, the more results we get. And we've gotten this far by being relentless, and we're going to continue that relentlessness.
It's not just the Trump Department of Justice, though, is it, in truth? It's the Biden administration, the Obama administration, for that matter. I mean, these crimes go back years and years.
There's a scandal here that has spanned multiple administrations, and it's a problem, and it has eroded trust in government. People do not want to see these rich and powerful people get away with it because of their political connections. And so to see Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor face at least some form of justice with an arrest is a huge breakthrough, I think, for the victims and for a lot of people in the public.
He was under some pressure from the government here to give evidence to your committee. That obviously won't happen now, pending the criminal investigation. So where does it leave you?
I'm not clear that he may still come and testify before a committee. I'm leaving that door.
The criminal process will have to complete first, though.
Perhaps, but he is still welcome to come talk to our committee anytime he'd like. Remember, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor claims he did nothing wrong. He committed no criminal wrongdoing in this entire case. And so if that's the case, a great way to clear your name is to come and talk to us.
Congressman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, let's return to our correspondent, Anushka Astana in Washington. We heard the congressman there saying he would still like to hear from Andrew. I mean, give us the background to this.
Well, as I was saying, Krish, this is huge news here because it originated here with lawmakers like the one you were just speaking to. This is where the pressure and the votes happened to release those files. And one thing that we do know is that the Department of Justice knew exactly what was in those files. The Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, has told us that they reviewed it line by line. So they will have known about any incriminating or potentially incriminating information about Andrew, but also others. And I think that has led to a frustration here. They welcome action in the UK. They asked, why isn't there more action here in the US? The former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has posted a comparison on social media saying Andrew arrested in the UK, 0 Epstein-related arrests here in the US. Last week I was speaking to congresswomen who were also on that committee, Jasmine Crockett and Melanie Stansbury, and they were saying the same thing. Good for the UK, why not here in the US? But look, I think there is also a frustration beyond that about where these criminal investigations might lead. This is about information allegedly leaked to Jeffrey Epstein. But we have a situation in which we have over 1,200 survivors. One of them, Lisa Phillips, said to me last week that Epstein told her Andrew was the one person who had more of a perversion for young girls than he did. Now, Andrew has obviously denied any wrongdoing, but I think the point I'm trying to make is survivors want to know, will there ever be justice for the abuse that they faced?
Anushka Astana, our US editor, and in the last few minutes Andrew has been pictured leaving a police station following his arrest, so he's not going to spend the night in the custody suite. Well, it's a little under 3 weeks since millions more Epstein files went live, prompting the inquiry into misconduct in public office by Thames Valley Police. The same force is also assessing claims that a woman was trafficked for sex with Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. But other forces have been slower to act after previous revelations from the files, as our Home Affairs correspondent Simeon Brown reports.
It was once unthinkable that a man born a prince could die a prisoner. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor will face interrogation for sharing sensitive information with Jeffrey Epstein. But what about the sex crimes Epstein is alleged to have committed in the UK? According to flight logs, the UK was a destination for Epstein's private jet, the so-called Lolita Express. On planes operated by Epstein, the passengers included women who alleged they were victims of exploitation. This is a sample of dozens of journeys across 3 decades that included introducing Virginia Giuffre to Andrew. Today her family welcomed the news and said this was a win for Epstein survivors. To some, the elephant in the room is that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is not under investigations over the allegations made by Virginia Giuffre and other women that were made to the Metropolitan Police, allegations that Andrew has always denied. So, whilst Thames Valley Police is investigating Andrew over misconduct in public office, the Metropolitan Police, on the other hand, continues to resist a criminal probe into the allegations that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked women to this country. And one of them, or several, had sex with the man formerly known as Prince Andrew.
It's essential that the police pursue every single allegation that is made about any form of sexual violence, that where there was any abuse of power or coercion or unwanted sexual contact, whether that's towards children or towards adults. And it's also essential that those that facilitated the cover-up and facilitated any form of abuse are also held to account.
So what could the misconduct investigation into Andrew reveal about those who enabled Epstein in the UK?
But just to say that we have come a long way.
This was the 2016 event for Andrew's initiative pitch at the Palace. The man sitting next to the Queen is David Stern, a director and aide Epstein had introduced to the Palace. It was Stern who told Epstein the Queen gave Andrew her full support. And Channel 4 News has uncovered emails further illustrating Stern's role as a middleman, even after Andrew claims he cuts contact with Epstein. Stern, who was supposed to be in aid of Andrew, was even updating Epstein on the whereabouts of Lord Mandelson. Here he says Mandelson will be in Beijing and Andrew back from Scotland. In 2010, when Andrew invited Stern to a meeting on June 7, Stern asked Epstein for permission to go. In 2015, after Andrew began to publicly distance himself from Epstein in a public statement, Epstein asked Stern for a heads up, and Stern agreed, promising to check who issued the statement. In the Epstein files, thousands of emails feature Stern, who so far has declined to comment. But the investigation may answer, why was Stern leaking details from the palace? If his role as a middleman was agreed by Andrew, and what else Stern witnessed alongside Andrew. For now, the first police interviews are with the former prince himself. For years, he refused to disclose all his dealings with Epstein. Now, with royal privilege seemingly revoked, the choice is no longer his.
Simeon Brown reporting. So just to reiterate, Andrew has now been released by police in Aylsham police station in Norfolk. Joining us now is the US lawyer Gloria Allred, who has represented 27 survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse, and we've spoken to her many times in the last couple of years. Thank you for joining us tonight. What do you think his arrest means to the survivors, even though he's been arrested on misconduct in public office rather than the other allegations?
Well, as has been pointed out by a former Crown Chief Prosecutor, this is an arrest for a crime against the state. It is not an arrest for crimes against women. So he is now facing the criminal justice system in the UK. I have been calling on him publicly many times, probably on your program as well, since 2019 to speak to the FBI, to speak to Homeland Security in the United States, to help to assist the investigation of what happened to so many child victims who were sex trafficked and adult females who were sexually exploited. He never did. He only gave that interview on the BBC, not under oath, without any legal duty to tell the truth, which is not the same as saying that he didn't tell the truth, but I don't know that he did. Certainly, we would have liked to have seen him under oath or under some legal duty not to commit perjury. Having said that, many of the survivors want him to pay consequences. It is interesting, however, that this arrest came quickly after emails about allegations of his providing secrets of the state. And yet
Indeed.
We are still waiting for any crimes against women, if there are any, to be prosecuted.
Now, just while we speak, I want to bring up the image of Andrew leaving the police station. It's an image I'm sure that's going to become memorable and historic, and we'll just leave it there for people to look at while we continue speaking. I mean, isn't it striking and alarming to you that while these processes are going on in Britain, there is almost no accountability in the US?
Absolutely. And I've said here, for example, on CNN, that when we look at the UK and their efforts at accountability, this is what democracy looks like. We don't have democracy in the United States anymore. There are allegations of a cover-up. You have so many billionaires and famous men who are not facing any real accountability, certainly no accountability in the criminal justice system. The only person who has been tried and convicted, Krishan, is Ms. Maxwell, a British citizen. And so, UK is a model. It's not fast enough for many survivors. Again, there's no prosecution for any crimes against women. However, it is definitely more than we are seeing in the United States. But I do commend so many survivors speaking out and getting these files released. This is what we mean by empowerment. This is the Me Too movement, and this is the reckoning.
Joining me now is David Yelland, former editor of the Sun newspaper and now co-host of the podcast When It Hits the Fan. Stephen Flynn is leader of the Scottish National Party in Westminster, and Dr. Tessa Dunlop is a royal historian. David Yelland, no matter how good their crisis PR, does this have the potential to become existential for the monarchy?
This is one of the biggest crises for the British establishment for decades, and this is day one. Those people over there in the palace don't know where this is going to go. We're going to look back in years to come, 10 years, 15, 20 years, and remember this day as a turning point. The question is, where did it turn to? And we don't know.
Stephen Flynn, is it time to restart the debate about the point of the monarchy and their role in the Constitution?
Look, Christian, it's only a few months ago that myself and others sought to raise issues regarding the then Prince Andrew in the House of Commons, and the Labour Prime Minister Keir Starmer tried to block us from doing so pretty successfully up until a point. And you know, that subservient nature which almost follows into obsequiousness at a certain point needs to end. I think the public expect the head of state and all whom are associated with him to behave in a certain manner, and they also, I think, believe them to have to be accountable too. And if we as parliamentarians can't hold them to account, then who can?
Do you think it's the beginning of the end?
I don't know, to be honest. I think it's probably a little bit too soon to make such grand claims, but I think we're at the start of a very significant realignment between the public and the monarchy. And I think that Parliament's going to have a crucial role to play within that, should parliamentarians have the courage to speak about this. I somewhat doubt whether there's a majority of parliamentarians who are willing to do that, but I certainly am, and I would encourage others to speak up.
Tessa Dunlop, I mean, crucial to this is how the public reacts now.
To an extent, although of course the royal family are far from elected, so our capacity to hold them to account is very different. I've got to counter one of your guests, David Yelland. He suggests this is day one. No, day one was way back when, in 2011, when the picture was first released of Andrew and Epstein, and the News of the World ran the Peter and the Prince story. And you'll remember then, for the next 8 years, he continued as a working royal, only then to enjoy a platform on the building behind you, Christian, to denounce all claims of the late Virginia Dufresne, to pretend that photo never really existed. We now know that it did, and to say that he hadn't continued relations with Epstein after 2010. We now know that he did. And the idea, by the way, and they've done this relatively successfully at the moment, but given everything in terms of royal success or otherwise moves at a glacial speed, at the moment they've tried to decouple themselves. So we're all in the public domain stumbling over his new name, you know, Mountbatten-Windsor. But as you rightly pointed out in your introduction, he's 8th in line to the throne. It's worth bearing in mind, actually, when he was born exactly 66 years ago today, he was the first child to be born to a reigning monarch in over 100 years, the first one also in Buckingham Palace. You can't unroyal Andrew.
David Yelland, I mean, if you think back to your time in the press, how protected were the royal family by the establishment, and by that I also mean the media?
Well, they have been protected for decades by a sort of subservience. There is a sort of, I used to think sometimes when I was editor of The Sun, the only reason for the royal family was to sell copies of the newspaper I was editing. They both sides need each other. And Tessa's absolutely right. You know, these pictures have been around for a long time. But what I detect at the moment is the people, the public, and certainly people around the world, have completely lost faith in the royal family, and I think they are teetering on the edge at the moment. I think the statements today have been extremely good, both of them. The King's statement was extremely good, but who is looking at those? I think people over the age of 40 or 50 in the sort of middle classes, the establishment type people, they're looking at them, but the younger generations are not, and people around the world certainly are not. I don't think the royal family is in peril short term, but I think there's a real risk that the King's entire reign is remembered for the way he handled his brother.
But we have this sort of strange sort of triumvirate of people government media
yeah.
who have kind of sort of propped up this idea of the monarchy, even though it's not really been clear for quite a while what it is.
That's right.
And you wonder if if at least two pillars of that, the public and the media, are going to change.
Right. That's right. It's a joint venture. It's a three-way sort of deal that has kept them in business since the 60s. And that is why it is so. If this falls apart, then we will start to ask ourselves what the point of the royal family is. Constitutionally, of course, that's very dangerous. I don't think the royal family personally should go, but I think if the public starts to ask what is the point of them, then the whole thing peters out.
Stephen Flynn, do you really think there's a better alternative?
Yeah, of course I do. Look, I'm a Republican, and I have been for a very long time. I actually quite like King Charles. He's very good company, and he's the head of state, and he deserves our respect in that context. But look, I firmly believe that in a democracy that the people should have the final say. And that applies to who they put into Parliament, and therefore for parliamentarians to be able to hold the head of state and those around him to account should they see fit. And there's going to be a lot of commentary about succession to the throne. There's going to be a lot of commentary about who can and can't be removed from the House of Lords, rightly so, by the way, given what's happened over the course of recent months. But that's where Parliament needs to assert itself, and members of Parliament need to be confident in their arguments. And I think the era of subservience is perhaps coming to an end, Krishnan.